I'm Carly Kramer. I'm the founder of Beekeepers Naturals, and this is the science of fertility. Let's get into it.
Okay, I'm so excited that we're back in action, and I'm excited to just talk about everything postpartum, the good, bad, and very ugly parts of it that I don't feel like people talk about. Like I can think of so many beautiful women in my life that I know have gone through the experience, and it's almost like you hibernate in that time because you're figuring out how to breastfeed, how to be a new mom, like how to do all these things, and we're not talking about the ugly.
I did not think that I would hibernate. I planned a 3-month mat leave.
Okay.
But I kind of was like, I'll be back much sooner. I really thought that I would have my baby and then just be fine.
Okay.
And now I realize how fucking hilarious that is. That's like insane. Also, we're from Canada. Right. A lot of people in our lives take
12 months,
6, 12, 18-month maternity leaves. I remember my co-founder's mom was like, "Are you taking 18 months?" And I was like, 3. And she was like, "What?"
But we have to. And especially running a business, you had to get back on your feet. So, okay, I want to start with we're like freshly postpartum, like just delivered. What surprised you in the moment?
Yeah.
Like, were you thinking at all about like labor, the delivery itself, or was it just like this pure bliss? Because I know the science behind like the oxytocin rush is like so robust that a lot of people and patients will say it's like amnesia. Like you just forget what you went through. But I don't feel like maybe they're really honest.
I was very informed going into birth.
Okay.
I knew what could go wrong, what I wanted to happen. And I was very fortunate. I had a very positive birth experience, but I think because I was so aware of what could go wrong and what could happen, and I had all these contingency plans, I think that action for me, that maybe other people just want to be like breezy and chill. It's not my vibe.
Yeah. You like to have like everything mapped out.
Yeah, everything's
mentally
mapped out, and then I'm very chill.
Yeah.
But that's what happened. Everything was mentally mapped. And because of that, I was really chill. And I had this beautiful experience.
Great.
And then all of a sudden, you're just like, what do I do? Oh my God. And that's why they keep you in the hospital for a couple of days.
Yes, thankfully.
My partner and I were like, we don't want to leave the hospital. They're like, you guys can go now. And we're like, can we?
Are you sure?
I feel like we should stay though. But yeah, I think it's just immediately, I think the surprising thing was I knew conceptually that a newborn has to eat every 2 hours, but just how short 2 hours become.
Starts to feel like 10, 20 minutes in between feeds.
It's just like, oh,
right.
Another. Let's go.
Are you sure?
Yeah. You sure you're not?
Okay, and I've heard horror stories of the first pee after like vaginal birth and delivery.
That was really painful.
Okay, so
again, I was really fortunate. I did not tear.
Okay.
I did a lot of pelvic PT before.
Yeah, what helped? Okay,
pelvic PT was huge.
Okay, I recommend that too all the time.
Big recommendation. A lot of my girlfriends who live in Europe, they use this thing called the Apino. The Apino is a device that in Europe you can buy at the pharmacy, and it is covered by insurance. Every European woman is using the Apino. It's like this little water balloon. You stick it in there, and you kind of like very slowly inflate it. Yeah, you very slowly inflate it, and it kind of trains your vagina to be able to expand and contract.
Okay.
And I got that. My in-laws were in Europe. I had them pick up an Apino for me and bring it home. And I used it. And I didn't tear.
Okay.
I had, all things considered, I didn't feel like this at the time, but now looking back and looking at where I am now, a fantastic recovery.
Amazing.
And I highly recommend. You can actually, I think you can buy it on eBay in the US. A few of my girlfriends, I told them about this.
That's so good to know. I haven't heard of this. So, amazing.
Everyone has to use this. Like, everyone listening, get an Apino.
Okay.
So that's a huge help. If you have the ability to do pelvic PT, that can be supportive. Were you religious about like exercises specifically for pelvic floor, or were you just like when you were going to your appointments? It was when I was going. Okay. And that's why
There's 2 types of patients, and like I am also that way, so I totally feel you.
So if you're the other type of patient, then you can probably Google exercises and do them at home.
Yes.
Also, there's this thing called, I think it's called the wand. We'll link it in the show notes, but I know a bunch of my girlfriends who they didn't have coverage to do pelvic PT or they couldn't afford it.
Yeah, I can
They used the wand.
Okay.
And also had supportive experiences with that.
Okay, great.
You don't have to tear.
Right.
Obviously, sometimes it just happens and that's
totally
fine. And you can also totally recover from that. I have so many friends that also had that experience. And
right.
That's, you can recover from anything.
But the recovery can be easier for most if we're not tearing. So it's amazing. If there's some tools out there that can potentially minimize the risk, then I think that's amazing. So pelvic PT is awesome.
Yeah, so pelvic PT, Apino, wand, big fan. Okay. So anyways, I had a very good birth.
Okay, great.
Then, it's just so weird. Like, you're basically wearing a diaper. So you're in a diaper and the baby's in a diaper.
Okay.
And that's another thing like people told me and I was like, yeah, you wear a diaper for like a few days. And it's like, no, you're wearing a diaper for like a month.
Okay.
You're bleeding.
Yep.
I mean, it
can last for quite a few weeks.
I think that I was bleeding not like full-blown period style necessarily, although at the start it was like heavier than any period I had.
Okay.
But it was a lot of blood at first. And then I think I was like wearing pads and the Frida Mom cool pads. Oh, love those.
Life-saving.
Yeah. So I was using that. I was like at the start, they give you them at the hospital, but then I was using the Frida Mom cool ones. I was putting witch hazel on them, which is really cooling. I was using, I think Earth Mama Peri spray and spraying it on the pad and then putting that on just to support healing and to cool down because like.
It just feels like it's on fire, right?
Yeah, it feels like you're on fire. That first pee is like fucking bad. That's torture. It's
criminal.
So painful. And they tell you, they're like, get ready for this. I think they gave me painkillers of some sort.
Oh,
maybe it was just like a Tylenol, I don't know. But they were like, you might need this when you pee. And I was like, they were like, you might need this when you pee. And I was like, okay, wow.
Like mentally preparing for that first pee.
Yeah. So that was interesting. But it was really...
So you were in diapers for a few weeks.
I was in diapers for a few weeks.
Some are more, some are a little less.
Yeah.
And are we talking like mainly spotting? Because like obviously I know the science and like the expectation of like what's normal, but I haven't experienced it myself.
I think I was bleeding full on for I want to say a week. And then it was spotting, but it was like a light period.
And how's the cramping as the uterus is contracting back to its size? Because I've heard that can be pretty intense.
That was really intense. That happened to me. That basically all happened to me while we were at the hospital. So we were in the hospital for 3 days after I delivered.
Okay.
And breastfeeding can stimulate the cramping.
Yes, which is kind of one of the benefits of breastfeeding.
Yeah,
is that oxytocin.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
But I was like, what is happening? And also breastfeeding was really hard at the start. I found it really painful at the start because, my baby didn't have a great latch at the very start. We totally got there and she was an all-star.
Amazing.
By the end, but at the very start, it was like pretty uncomfortable for me.
Did you get a lactation consultant
I did.
In the hospital or more? And did you do additional when you got home?
Lactation consultants are huge.
So worth it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's another one. For me, it was covered, which is amazing. Yeah. For those who don't have it covered, there's some great resources. I love her name's on Instagram. It's LA Lactation.
Okay.
Her name's Julie, and she has a bunch of videos on YouTube.
Oh, amazing.
She's a great account.
So just info out there, even if you don't get her specifically hands-on.
Yeah, but she's amazing. She's who I worked with. And I worked with a few different lactation consultants and a few through the hospital where I delivered. But Julie was just like amazing. And her info's incredible.
Because that's difficult when you're, like if you have desires and the potential ability to breastfeed, but the latch isn't there, and then you're frustrated or you feel like you're doing something wrong and then the stress builds up and you're sleep deprived and it's like all of these things factors in. So
breastfeeding is crazy. It is more than a full-time job.
I can only imagine.
That was a big thing. This whole fantasy I had about like postpartum, I was going to be able to just like jump back into work and still obviously spend a lot of time with my baby. But the thing I didn't really factor in to my image of postpartum was my personal recovery.
Okay.
And my psychological experience. Because I am no stranger to anxiety, I didn't think it would be so pronounced or like different. It was like a different texture or type of anxiety.
So it felt different than anxiety you've generally experienced day to day.
Yeah, it was, this is going to sound crazy, but I was having these dreams about about tsunamis.
Yeah.
And like watching my family like in a tsunami. And it was really terrifying.
Absolutely.
And
this is the worst type of dreams, especially as a new mom.
Tsunami dreams. But it was crazy because it's almost like you're picturing all of a sudden you have this being that you care about more than anything in the world. And your radar is like just going crazy.
Right,
what could go wrong?
Totally.
Everything is so heightened.
Right.
And you're picturing what could go wrong.
And it's an endless list.
Endless. And it's terrifying. And these things that you never thought about going wrong before, all of a sudden you're like vividly picturing them. And that is a major symptom of PPA, postpartum anxiety disorder. And I did have that. Mm-hmm. But
how long into having that do you feel like until you like recognized it as something that was maybe, I don't like to say abnormal because I know it can be a common experience, that you then sought some additional, because I know obviously we had been in communication, but
it was kind of a while. I mean, my big things were like very extreme germophobia, which like I'm a germaphobe on a good day. So it was a
You're just
whole
very
other
clean.
level.
I like to think of you as like my clean queen.
Very, very clean queen. Exactly. But yeah, it was definitely pronounced, and there was like a layer of stress and fear and these sort of intrusive thoughts of what could go wrong and like visions of what could go wrong. Those really tripped me out because I'm a person that leans on intuition to some extent, and you're just having these like visceral.
And like you, like part of your brain recognizes how absurd that is.
But it's also like, I've never had these before. Does this mean something?
Yeah.
Should I
is this
explore
intuition?
this? Is this intuition? Or is this like,
and then you're down
this
this rabbit hole that you can't pull yourself out of.
And
how long until that improved? And what helped the most?
I don't think I went. So I ended up going on an SSRI.
Okay.
And I want to say what helped the most actually, that was community.
Okay,
so
amazing.
One of my really good girlfriends who I actually really became close with after having a baby, we delivered 2 weeks apart.
Okay. Oh.
She
going through
was
the worst together.
Yeah. So she was really struggling with postpartum depression and anxiety.
Okay.
And she was really vocal about it, which helped me a lot.
Amazing.
And it kind of, and you know, I saw her go on medication and feel more like herself. And I'm, you know me, I'm very natural, avoid pharmaceuticals, not against them, but
we tried a handful that we knew to be safe, which is the tough part about breastfeeding too, is we get more limited in what supplements we can lean on just because of the lack of safety data. So then it's the conversation of like, hey, if this isn't moving the needle, like, generally that's the next best step.
Yeah. So I spoke to my OB. I was referred to a psychiatrist that specializes in postpartum.
Amazing.
She put me on Zoloft, which is the one that has the most studies with to be done with breastfeeding.
Yeah.
And it really helped. It helped me get back to a place where I felt a little bit more balanced, a little bit more like myself. And it was also though my hormones stabilizing over time. So I planned this 3-month mat leave. It was this, I actually feel like guilt for this with my team because I was very hot and cold. 6 weeks out, I was like sending messages and being like, is this getting done? I just saw this post on the Beekeeper's Instagram and like just sort of like dropping in.
Was it hard for you to even like leading into delivery and like knowing baby was coming and that Lily was coming? Was it tough for you to even turn that off? Like, do you feel like it was always kind of on the back of your mind?
Yes and no. I was nervous to step away. I also felt like I had a good plan, but then I delivered 3 weeks early.
Okay.
So 3 weeks, like those were 3 meaningful weeks that I was planning to wrap stuff up.
I know you were working.
My plan was to work literally until I went into labor, and I was working when I went into labor. I went into labor during a board meeting, which is really funny. I was out at a team dinner the night before, and I was like, yeah, I think it's Braxton Hicks. I'm having cramps because I wasn't really eating at the dinner, and everyone, like, I eat a lot. And a few of the women on my team were like, when's your due date? Are we sure?
Yeah.
That's Braxton Hicks. And I was like, yeah. And it turns out I was fully in labor at that dinner. And I was like kind of like a weird vibe at the dinner too. So I feel like everyone forgave that.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, I think it was like really disruptive for my team, me kind of dropping in, being like, I want to see this, this, and this. And then they do it and be like, is this what you wanted? And then I'm like, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, I'm getting all these messages like, but I'm on fucking mat leave. And then I was kind of in and out. And I think that was jarring for people. Next time around, I'm going to have a conversation about what to expect.
Yeah.
So
do you feel like that's where community was also helpful for you? Because I know you're connected with a lot of other moms, whether working, not working, of just like you said, you have this anticipated expectation of like, hey, it's going to look like this. And then you're being pulled different directions as you're going through it.
Yeah, I think community was so helpful for that. But I also think there's this weird thing in the US, this cultural pressure, or maybe I'm just making this up and it's just what I experienced, but I felt this pressure to bounce back really quickly and run my business and keep up and like not step away from my business. And I needed to step away from my business. So I ended up—
I think that's the toughest part about being a female, especially a female founder.
I still feel a lot of shame about it, actually, that I needed more than 3 months. And I'm really grateful that I run my company. And what I ended up doing was I took 3 months, and then it was kind of coinciding with when I got the PPA diagnosis and I started my meds, but I was really struggling. And I took an extra month for mental health.
Amazing.
And so I ended up with a 4-month mat leave. Technically, I was working during that month 4, but it's
like a lighter.
It was lighter
hopefully.
than my normal. Yeah. And I wasn't like going to things and showing up for things
that you otherwise
physically. It was a lot more like Zoom calls, work from home. Like that's kind of how it looked for me.
I love that you honored that for yourself, though. Because I know you, and I know that you're so driven, and that it was probably so difficult to even accept and pursue medication support for how you were feeling. I think that's amazing, and I hope that this helps someone out there that maybe being like, okay, it is okay to go that route if I need it, but then also honoring like I am not in a good place with myself right now, that I can't step back in fully to my business until I feel more grounded. And I think that's beautiful that you did that.
Thank you. It was really hard to do that. Like even right now, I feel shame about it. I'm like kind of start crying thinking about it, which is so fucked up. And I don't know why I feel shame, because my team was like very supportive.
Sure, you could have the most supportive, but like you said, I think it's that societal pressure. Yeah. And there is research that shows as females, we are and do get set back by having children. And that's so frustrating because no one else can carry, like it's on us as the moms or mothers, and like it's a beautiful thing to do. And it's so frustrating when that pressure, like you don't even realize that it gets engraved into you until you experience it. And then even now, like you're saying,
even
like,
now, I mean, I'm nervous for my next pregnancy, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm nervous because the PPA was really gnarly. Like I really wasn't myself. It was really hard to function. At that time, I was exclusively breastfeeding, and I was spending so much time with my little one, which was beautiful. Yeah. But I couldn't really function to do anything else. Like
it almost feels, I've had some patients say it feels like transactional sometimes when like you're breastfeeding and like you don't feel like yourself.
Yeah, that's
and you're
all
just,
I was doing.
You're feeding. Yeah. Newborns you're not getting interaction with. They can only see like 8 to 15 inches in front of them. So unless they're like on the breast or like right in front of your face, they don't see you. So you don't get that like feedback from them like you do now.
And the snuggle, it's totally different. I mean, now I get so much interaction from her. But the snuggles were so special, and watching her change, and even like how much I loved. I mean, I did it for 13 months. I loved breastfeeding in the end as much as I struggled in the beginning. But it was more just, it was so much time. And then I felt so unlike myself. My physical recovery was, even though I had the best case scenario with all these things, it was still really hard.
How was it still really hard being in your body postpartum? Because I know we've talked about it, and I'm happy sharing. We both have struggled with body dysmorphia for most of our lives. And I know we're expected to gain weight. If we're a healthy weight going into pregnancy, we should be gaining roughly like 25 to 35 pounds. Like in my mind, I know that like, you know, for future me, that happens. Like that's expected. I know, again, in the back of our minds, like we know that. But then when you see that, and then when baby's out in this body, and you're like,
it's really
like how was that experience?
That was really hard because I loved being pregnant. I loved having the belly. And I went from this like feeling like I had this cute little belly to just kind of having like, it felt like a gut or something.
Sure.
And I just wasn't used to seeing my body like that because I lead an active lifestyle, and I just
doesn't feel like
it was my first time seeing myself like that. Also, you know, the belly kind of deflates.
Right.
And as so no matter how healthy you are, as the uterus is contracting, your stomach, it might be for a very short period of time, but for across the board, at least everyone I've spoken to, your stomach looks pretty different for a minute there.
Yeah.
And that's shocking. And then also just how you feel. I mean, I was still wearing diapers. I was still bleeding.
And I know you love being active.
I couldn't be active at all. So
how was that transition back into activity?
That was really how long I went not being active was really hard. And then I jumped back into being active too soon.
Okay.
And I got prolapse, which that was really stressful because you hear these crazy horror stories about prolapse.
Sure.
There's also not really a cure for it, so to speak. There's not good treatment. There's very little studies. 30%, they say that 30% of women who give birth vaginally have prolapse to some degree.
But 30% of women aren't talking about it, even though they're in that
my
group.
OB said it's much more, it's minimum 50%, more like 70% who deliver vaginally have prolapse and are totally unaware. And there's stages. You can be 1 to 4. I'm really fortunate that I think at the worst I was stage 2.
Okay.
And then I actually healed. I went down to stage 1 and then I now technically do not have prolapse.
Amazing.
But I'm nervous for my next pregnancy for sure. And so anyways, I went back to physical activity. It was after I was cleared and basically immediately got prolapse. And so I was in a lot of pelvic pain.
And then that slowed you back down again, I imagine, from being active.
Yeah, that slowed me down from being active. I'm sure that affected PPA. That was at the 6-week mark.
What did you do that you feel like helped the most with the vaginal prolapse? Because I know we talked a bit about, and you're welcome to share, I can, about the estradiol cream, but I know you've done some other stuff too.
Yeah, so I was prescribed, so when you have a low grade prolapse, you often will get prescribed estradiol because when also prolapse can be more common when you're breastfeeding. When you're breastfeeding, you can explain this better than I can, but
you're doing great.
Thank you. Just cut me off if I mess this up.
I'll go time out.
You have your hormones are different when you're breastfeeding.
Totally. The prolactin is sky high. She's our prolactational hormone. She's doing what she should. She's helping you produce the breast milk, but she's also suppressing the production of other things, estrogen being one of the key ones. And I think that's something that we also just don't talk about is during pregnancy, your estrogen levels reach like tens of thousands, like crazy high. Your body's never seen that much estrogen. And then postpartum, and she's like postmenopausal range now. So like huge shift.
Yeah.
So yes, and then that can continue if and while we breastfeed because that feedback keeps prolactin going, which then keeps that estradiol lower. And why estrogen is important is it helps with the tonicity and elasticity of our vaginal tissue. It's something that I use a lot in my postmenopausal women, but also in postpartum because it can help kind of rejuvenate things. It can help with the moisture. It can help again with the muscle activation. And I know that something that you turned to was part of your routine.
I was given that, but I also read that it can alter your milk supply. And my whole life at that point was breastfeeding. So I didn't really use it. And that slowed the roll on my prolapse recovery. But I worked with an amazing pelvic floor therapist who she was also fantastic. Her name's Allison Oswald. She also has a lot of information on her social media. And she's great YouTubes. And she has, for anyone who doesn't live in Los Angeles and can't work with her, she has online programs that are amazing.
Fantastic.
So I did her, I had a few sessions with her.
Okay.
And then I ended up doing her online program and it's really slow. It's like marching and it's a whole sequence of exercises that help your body recover from prolapse. And I did. And she's had 3 and she had prolapse herself and fully recovered from it. And so it was really inspiring for me.
She's had the experience.
When you Google prolapse, it's like one of the worst things I've ever Googled. It's like your vagina's your organs are falling out of your vagina and you're screwed.
If anyone doesn't know, stage 4 is when we can actually like visualize generally. I mean, there's different types of prolapse, like whether it's the bladder or the rectum and whatnot.
Mine was my bladder.
But yes.
Yeah. And so my bladder was, if you Google
we call it a cystocele in case you wanted the medical term. Now
but when you Google it, it's literally like your bladder is falling out of your vagina and there's no cure and this is what it is. And it's probably going to get worse with age and future pregnancies.
Unless then they'll talk about like a bladder lift in the future or a
my God. A fucking hysterectomy is one of the things. I'm like, I'm not getting my uterus removed. Are you like, so it was really depressing Googling it because it basically...
It was like, you're doomed.
It's underreported for one. So, so I felt very isolated and scared. The surgeries have very poor results.
Yep.
And the surgeries
and complications too, with scar tissue. And
the surgeries are really
babies.
Extreme.
Yep.
And I want more babies. I want to live an active lifestyle. Like it was just really depressing. That I'm sure contributed to a whole... I mean, it's a part of, yeah, like it was really upsetting. And so for anyone who does have prolapse, let's go with what my OB said and what many pelvic floor therapists. I'm lucky because I have access to amazing people in the medical world. As you know, you're one of them. And I spoke to literally everyone. I went fucking crazy because I was like, I want to have more babies. I want to have sex. I want to exercise. Like,
I want to do all
those
these
three things make up a lot of what I care about in my life. Like,
I'm not nothing to be in my vaginal canal.
Yeah. So I spoke to a lot of experts, and for those listening or watching, it's quite likely that over 70% of women who deliver vaginally have prolapse. So you are not alone. It is not abnormal. Your vagina is not fucked forever. You can totally recover from it. And even people who are at higher stages, I got connected with all kinds of people. I got connected with a woman who had stage 4, who when she delivered, her uterus also came out and they had to put it back in. And she's gone on to have more babies. She has an amazing sex life. She has recovered, so you can do it. It's really a difficult thing though, because there's terrible information online. It's very isolating. Probably many of your friends have it, but it hasn't been properly diagnosed,
no
or
one's
they're not
talking
aware.
about what's bulging.
Yeah, because it just
coming out.
You're sore down there. So you're not aware if like, is this sore from having a baby? Is this
like abnormal sore?
Is this abnormal? Yeah, you don't really know. And there isn't a good measure because unfortunately in the medical system, we haven't spent enough time understanding the woman's experience.
Totally.
So yeah, it's so common, and there are things you can do and you can fully heal. One of my really good friends, mom of 3, had prolapse with her first. She is now 110% healed.
Amazing.
Totally fine. And each time she had to re-heal, and she had to do a lot of pelvic floor physical therapy. So anyways, the recovery. So pelvic floor physical therapy was a big thing. There are some great online programs. I love Allison Oswald's program. I also like, I think it's called Every Mom. They have a good app. And then Megan Roop does like a good postpartum recovery thing. But specifically, Allison Oswald is coming from like a really amazing perspective. So I used all 3 of those things, but I really, just to try and see what I liked, I leaned into Allison. And then once I was starting to wean, I got more serious using the estradiol. Is that how you say it?
Estradiol. Yeah, you were close. And there's mixed opinions on whether using it vaginally does get absorbed systemically and has an impact on milk supply. I think some people can be more sensitive to that than others, but like I totally understand your hesitation.
I was working so hard keeping my supply up because I wasn't, at first
some
I had a low
people are overproducers. So they're
if
like,
I was an overproducer, I'd probably
it.
be like, that's fine. But for me, with my hesitation around anything that's prescribed, and then also because I worked very hard to get my supply to a good place, and I got it there, but like I wasn't just like an overproducer from day one, and it wasn't super easy at all. It was quite a journey. But when I started to wean, I started using that. You also gave me some things that were a little bit more natural that I was using prior to that. What was that?
The suppositories. Yeah. So those by Bezwecken, they're hydration ovals. So they have estriol, which is one of our estrogens. It's considered the weaker estrogen. So, and by weaker, it just means the estrogen receptors that live around our body, but especially in the vaginal area, they will respond more quickly to something like estradiol. Estriol, it's going to be kind of like on and off the receptor a little bit more. And then also in that is something called DHEA, which is one of the hormones we talked about in previous episode about labs. But that DHEA locally actually can be really great for helping build that mucous membrane as well. And we want that moisture there to help with good flora and bacteria, because I know vaginal dryness can be another piece of the puzzle postpartum, just with that estrogen plummet. So those two together can be really nice. And then that way we're not dealing with a cream. You can maybe share how not so sexy cream down there can be. Yeah. So a little suppository is like we're just boop in, and then
you put that in and
carry on.
So I liked those. I used those, and then I started using the cream. And as it was really, my body didn't feel totally normal until kind of recently when I stopped breastfeeding.
Yeah.
I mean, my body was recovered, but sex was basically painful for me until I stopped breastfeeding. And I know many people don't have that. My period also didn't come back until I stopped breastfeeding.
Yeah.
So I feel like I had, if I can just diagnose myself here, I had such low estrogen because I was breastfeeding. I had no vaginal elasticity.
Right, because of the low estrogen.
Sex felt like someone was like fucking jamming
That's awful.
into me.
That's criminal, because sex should be enjoyable and fun for all parties.
Yeah, and like I was like, let's go, and like and then he'd be like, I feel bad, I want to stop. Because it really hurt. Like he could see my face, and I was trying, not just for him, but for me. Like, you know, intimacy is a big part of our relationship, and
it's a beautiful part
I missed
of bonding.
that, and I wanted that, and so
totally.
we found other ways to connect while I was breastfeeding.
Amazing.
But it was
difficult,
and I mean, one of the things that made the transition and weaning, because I also didn't want to give up breastfeeding, but I was like, hey, I miss us, and so that's like a nice thing to have back. But yeah, it didn't feel normal for me for the entire 13 months that I was breastfeeding. It got better.
Okay.
It wasn't like at the start it was so painful.
Yeah.
But it didn't feel the way it does now.
Yeah.
And the way it did before. And now it feels the way it did before. So for anyone struggling,
so we came full circle.
Yeah, you totally come back. Like I really thought, especially from like my initial Google ChatGPT experience, I was going to have prolapse forever. I'm never going to enjoy sex again. It's going to get progressively worse with every baby. And I can't really exercise the way I did before, maybe ever again. Like it was just really a bummer. And then some other things that I did, the boring ass fucking PT that you just have to do, that is what did it for me. But I tried that. And so, you know, for people who, if their OB offers that, it's an option.
Yeah, a conversation to have. Totally. It's just nice to have more options.
We've talked about this offline for my next pregnancy. And this is something that science is kind of just getting there, which is fucked up and I'm mad about. But we talked a little bit about, for my next pregnancy, postpartum, me doing some HRT, hormone replacement therapy.
Yes.
Even though, you know, I potentially want to have another pregnancy after that. Like, is that, so tell me a little bit about that and how you're using it on your patients.
Yeah, I use it more than I thought I would, truthfully speaking. And a lot of that is, again, very natural process, kind of like in menopause. It's a natural process postpartum for our hormones to go from really high to really low. I very much recognize that. However, it's very slow to exactly what you're saying. It's fucked up how slow we are to do research on women. God forbid women postpartum, but anywho.
Yeah, it's only half the population. But let's forget that.
You're welcome, you're here. But they're doing some more research in like the last 5 or 10 years looking at hormone replacement therapy for treatment of postpartum anxiety and postpartum depression, which I think is amazing. And it makes a lot of sense to me. And part of that, especially if we look at the role estrogen plays in the brain, is it helps with serotonin. And serotonin is, I think a lot of people can maybe like recognize that word. It's our feel-good neurotransmitter,
you need that
brain chemical. Yes. And so estrogen plays a huge role with serotonin in the brain. And so if we're going from, again, sky high to super low,
it's a recipe for depression.
Exactly. And I have a lot of women in my office because I also do tend to treat those like postmenopausal women that are just experiencing mood shifts. And I see that postpartum as well. So I'm not afraid of hormone replacement therapy for those patients as long as they're comfortable, because yes, we don't have the extensive, robust, randomized, clinical, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial. Like I get that totally. We have good conversations of risks and benefits. But in my thought process is, if I'm replacing something that was there before at a level that's physiologic, just meaning a level that your body recognizes, and we're not doing too much, it's not affecting milk supply, and it's helping you feel good, then why not? So things that we tend to consider would be estradiol. If so, the patch is what's studied the most. So it's like a little itty bitty patch, generally goes like suprapubic area or like upper cheek, just anywhere that there isn't hair. Generally, the twice weekly is used the most, so you change it 2 times a week. Slowly absorbs or releases some estradiol over the course of 24 hours. Comes in varying doses. Generally, the lower doses do the trick. So progesterone is another hormone that we can use. The one caveat with progesterone, and same with estrogen, is if we're doing too much, it can impact milk supply. So something to consider for moms who are wanting to or considering milk production. And both of these need to be done under the guidance of a prescribing physician. I think that's really important. And then there is some research on actually using testosterone replacement therapy. And all of these, we know that there can be some transfer in breast milk, generally not a significant amount that impacts babies like gender and or development, but still conversations to be had. And again, I recognize that it's not getting as much attention as it should, but if there's more opportunity to help women postpartum, because like you said, if it took you at least 13 months, if we could chop that to 6 or, you know, something like that would be incredible. Yeah. And everyone has a different experience, but I just think knowing that there's options out there, especially with the postpartum anxiety and or postpartum depression, that can be really all-consuming on top of everything else that your body and you are going through.
So we're early into the research here, but it could change the game. You know, we could be in a world years from now where like the standard of care is you do HRT to bring you back to your baseline after you deliver. And so
and it's funny because some of the research titles are a novel approach to postpartum depression. And I'm like, is it really that novel? Like, it makes fucking sense. Like, we're just, you're going from high to zero before. We're going to do a little sprinkle back into your system. And oh my gosh, you feel better. It's just funny to me that how we're approaching it, but I digress.
But it's also interesting to me, the bone loss postpartum, because that is a real thing. Like I am, you know, for some women, I don't know where I am. You know, I don't think next time I want to test if we can. Can we test like my bone density before and after?
Actually, yes. And a few fun facts to throw in there. Yes, we can do bone density scans. You'll get exposed to a small amount of radiation. So it's just knowledge of that. That's why they aren't covered by insurance until later in life, which I do think is kind of BS because you should know earlier on if we're at, you know, already at a loss, which is called osteopenia. Other thing is there's 2 other less invasive tests. So there's something called C-telopeptide that we can measure in serum. It's a breakdown product of collagen that we can look for from the bones. If that's elevated, it's signifying that there is more bone turnover or more bone loss. And then there's also NTX, which is a urine test. Similar thing, looking for the excretion of a breakdown product of collagen from the bones. If that's elevated in relationship to creatinine, which is something that should be in the urine, then that can also tell us that there's maybe some more bone loss. So those are 2 things that we can look for.
What's more effective, blood or urine?
In measuring those, we have more research on the NTX as of right now. So the so the NTX is the urine. Okay. Yeah. So that would be my like first go-to. C-telopeptide is just like an additional one that we can do, but the NTX would be my preference. Okay. I tend to do that in between DEXA scans for patients. So if we do a DEXA scan annually or every 2 years tends to be the recommendation, then the NTX is like in between to kind of help tell me how is HRT doing for them, for example.
Can we do one of those?
Yeah, absolutely. We can totally do that. But to talk about the bone loss, with breastfeeding.
I'm only aware of this because of you. Like this is not a thing that women are aware of. And bone loss, and I mean, it can change your experience in your 70s, 80s, beyond.
Well, I have some good news is that while yes, some women can and often do experience some shifts bone mineral density while breastfeeding, most of the research right now shows that we gain that back and actually may even have stronger bones afterwards, which is kind of neat. So now I say all of that kind of with the caveat of we need to be diligent about the calcium intake, especially postpartum. This is not a time to suddenly be lacking on our prenatal. Like baby is taking everything from you.
I went off my prenatal postpartum and you're like, what are you doing? Like, and I went right back on
it. Because if you are not ingesting what you and baby need, it's just going to take from your body. Like breast milk is going to be preferred. It's going to be as nutrient dense as it needs to be. And so if you're not taking it in exogenously through your food, it's going to come from you. And that's where the calcium can come from. And oftentimes we are giving, I think it's roughly around 300 milligrams is what baby's taking from us calcium-wise per day. For us to meet our needs in babies, we need to be at least 1,000 to like 1,300 milligrams of calcium intake postpartum and breastfeeding specifically. So, and a lot of times that's not always just in the prenatal. That's where sometimes additional calcium and or magnesium supplementation can be helpful. So I think it's important to have that information and to kind of factor that in. Of course, there's ways we can eat it, but oftentimes just ingesting that additional. Because while I would love to just tell people to drink milk, I just have such a love-hate with milk these days that there's just so much sugar in the milk itself. We have better calcium sources.
I did love Greek yogurt, and I do love Greek yogurt, but postpartum. Let's talk about that, the supplements postpartum. So after I gave birth, I was like, oh, I don't have to take prenatals anymore. Yay.
Yeah.
I was wrong.
Technically, sure, no. But if we want to, and if we're thinking about, and really just how much calories you burn. A woman burns on average 600 calories breastfeeding daily. Like that's substantial. That's
crazy.
A hell of a workout. And you don't even really like, it's not like you're heavy breathing, I don't think.
No, I wasn't.
Not that I've watched you.
I wasn't there panting. Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, Lily Nichols, who I love her nutrition information on pregnancy, postpartum, all of that. She talks about how you have the protein requirements of an endurance athlete when you're breastfeeding.
It is not the time, as much as I know we're ready to be like, okay, like baby, we're bouncing back. Like it is not the time to be fasting, intermittent fasting, reducing calories. Like if your goal is to breastfeed, then we need to be like going with the intention of eating appropriately to achieve that.
And I was very focused on eating for my milk supply because once again, I was not an oversupplier. I was an undersupplier to start, and we got there. And I increased my healthy fat intake. I was eating a lot of like high fat, full fat dairy.
Did you stick with your DHA, like with your fish oil supplement?
I did.
Or did you come back to it?
So you know what? I was like, I'm always pretty into taking fish oil.
Yeah.
I like it for like joint health.
Yeah.
So many reasons to take it. So I'm never really lacking. But I was focused on taking the right amount of fish oil because I knew that she was getting it through my breast milk.
Yep.
I was also supplementing with additional vitamin D again because my pediatrician was like, you can either give her vitamin D drops.
Yep.
Or if you want to,
ensure that yours is,
you can do that. So I was doing that, and then eventually I transitioned and I was giving her a vitamin D drop.
Awesome.
But yeah, she was getting the nutrients from me. So I was doing vitamin D, I was doing fish oils, I went back on my prenatal.
Yep.
I was eating a high fat diet, a lot of protein, a lot of full fat dairy.
Amazing.
I ate a lot of oats, glyphosate tested, of course. And then some of the just like self-care stuff. There's this book called The First 40 Days. And that book advocates like lay flat for the first 40 days, which I love for so many women. I don't lay flat well.
Yeah, I was
so that was really hard.
Like,
I don't
how
have
much of that did you?
Yeah, I don't.
So you read it and you're like, I love that that's out there.
Yeah, super into this.
But no, that's
can't really like get there.
Yeah.
But anyways, the point is,
it gives you the permission to do so, and I think that's what we need to recognize.
So important.
Yeah,
and it talks a lot about things like bone broth, warming things, and in Ayurvedic traditions as well. It's like kachari, warming foods, eating a lot of warming, grounding, a lot of like healthy, whole grain-based. Kachari is, I think, made with quinoa.
Okay.
I made a lot of kachari postpartum. And that was also so great because I would make it in this like huge Instapot and just eat it over the week. So you've no time.
Yeah.
So that was huge. And yeah, just like really nourishing, warming foods, a lot of soup. My mom was living with me at that time, so she was just like making me all these. She stayed with us for 7 weeks, which was amazing. She was supposed to be with us for 3. Yeah. And my husband was like, please don't leave.
Please extend your stay. Having the help is amazing.
It was huge. It was huge. So that was amazing. And she made a lot of like huge batches of soup. And then even when she left, and if you do not have a mom or mother-in-law or someone like that, you can give it to your partner or do it yourself. I made a lot of, in the few moments I had, I would make these like huge batches of like a soup or a stew. I ate a lot of meat. I would make like a chili with like organ meats mixed in, like all of that. You were getting
all the nutrients. I think that, and that's what's nice is like if you're intentional in what you're eating, then some of the supplementation may not be necessary. But I think having that as a backup, because there is some evidence to show that even if we do eat a nice whole food-based diet, we still can be deficient in some micronutrients. And a lot of that is just, unfortunately, our soil is not as rich as it was in North America. And the nutrient like complexities of our food isn't what it used to be. And so that's where the supplements can be nice. I know that, some OBs may or may not feel that way, but in my opinion, it's not doing harm. Most of the things that we're ingesting don't bioaccumulate. So meaning that like your body will excrete the excess of like some B vitamins, for example, but it's ensuring that you're at least not in a deficient state. And so that's great.
Another thing too, next pregnancy, I'll probably add calcium to my supplement list, even though I was eating a lot of that.
Yep.
One thing that was really important for me with breastfeeding, just as it was with getting pregnant, was my thyroid. Nobody but you. And when I say nobody, I love my OB, but yeah, nobody was like, oh, you just gave birth. Maybe let's change your thyroid medication. You right away were like, okay, you delivered. Let's look at this.
Yeah.
When you
because you get the 1 6-week
nothing.
check-in.
Yeah, very little.
Right. And then it's like,
you're good.
You have a pulse still and you're breathing and the child is eating.
Yeah.
Good job.
Get back out there.
Yeah. It's like pat on the butt. Go get him. You're in,
go get him, tiger.
You can have sex if you'd like.
Yeah.
Maybe have fun.
Yikes. But my thyroid also affected my milk supply.
Yeah.
Once we got my thyroid in check postpartum, my milk supply stabilized, which was a huge thing. So just for another thing, even if you don't have a thyroid issue, I think you'd probably say this, like check your thyroid postpartum because your thyroid changes so much during pregnancy.
I've had a handful of patients that actually had autoimmune thyroid disease turned on after pregnancy that was not present during. And for a while they were, because if you're tired, of course, yes, like these things that you could easily attribute to being postpartum. And so I've had a handful of them that ignored it for like a few months, that they were like, oh, and then at some point they were like, okay, maybe this isn't right. And having looked at their thyroid and then also looking for antibodies, I've had both like Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is more of a hypothyroid picture, just an underfunctioning gland. And then I've also had Graves' disease show up postpartum, which is an overfunctioning gland and where like the anxiety can be crazy high. And so those things can be turned on after pregnancy that maybe weren't there before. So yes, exactly what you're saying. If you're even just questioning, is this normal to feel this way? Like, should I be this tired or should I be this anxious? Please see someone
because I think that's tested.
It's the best way to assess things. It's not common to have blood work done postpartum, but I think it should absolutely be necessary. I'm as much as my patients will allow, I'm as hands-on as they'd like me to be. I will run things as frequently as they would like. So I just think having that information and then tracking it over time is so important.
We were testing my thyroid. We did a little bit of testing postpartum and then we did, I think at at the 6, 7, I don't know, between 6 and 9 months, we did so much blood work.
Yeah.
And now I've had my first period after my third period. When's the next time we're doing this again?
Yes, after your third. We're letting things come back online, if you will.
So for everyone, good time to do it. Do your blood work. And then
ideally 4 to 6 weeks postpartum is like a great time to take a look and that you have like a semi-grasp on life, that we can take a look at you because yes, I know you were taking care of baby. I didn't really have a grasp
on life until 9 months. So that's when we did my blood work. Other than my thyroid, we did the thyroid. Loosely. We did the thyroid pretty quickly.
Yes, we did because very common that can change or shift even if someone's been on a pretty steady dose of thyroid medication throughout pregnancy. Those postpartum requirements can just cause some shifts. Yeah, super great to look at that.
Yeah, okay. And then also again after the third period.
Yeah.
I want to talk about digestion postpartum because that's an interesting one too. Okay. I mean, they tell you, I don't know. I know for some of my friends, they were like so constipated postpartum and it was a huge struggle. I didn't have a lot of digestive upset. I didn't have a ton of bloating actually. I also went on the Beekeeper's Gut Health supplement right away.
Amazing.
It's
your body thanks you.
Yeah. I mean, well, that one too, it's the propolis, the spore-based probiotic, and then tributrate. And I feel like tributrate, that's the postbiotic in there.
Yes, I love butyrate.
I feel like when I went on that supplement, it really caught my bloating and I got regular right away. Is that like in my head?
No, butyrate is so amazing. I wish you could just be like lightly in the water everywhere. That might be a weird thing to say. But like butyrate's incredible.
I would love that.
We're just opening capsules of complete gut health.
Take the fluoride out, put the butyrate in.
And then the other benefit of probiotics during
and by the way, the butyrate isn't just in all probiotics.
No, it's not.
Most probiotics actually don't have butyrate.
No, it's generally a whole separate supplement. So the fact that you guys made the 3-in-1 I think is so amazing because it's like you're helping feed the good bacteria. You're giving the bacteria in a form that can actually make it to a meaningful place, the spore-based probiotic, because some of the bacteria or most will just get killed in the stomach acid or hang out in the small intestine, which can cause a lot of that bloating and distension. A spore-based probiotic allows it to get to the large intestine, which is where we want most of it to flourish. And then the butyrate is there to like keep it and like feed it further and feed the intestinal lining.
This is so funny. I feel like I'm not allowed to plug my brand right now, but also that's genuinely what I used. And it has the patented form and it's the best one. So okay. So anyways,
also that's there.
I had a great experience with that. Yeah. But I do feel like that also was a part of my weight stabilization too, like getting back in shape.
Totally.
Just like taking care of my digestive health. But why does having a baby mess up your digestive health?
A lot of it just has to do with our hormonal fluctuations. Just kind of like during pregnancy, where some people never experienced constipation, they do during pregnancy. Things are sky high. There's a mismatch in communication between the brain and the gut. Our gut has its own nervous system. It's called the enteric nervous system. It's actually really cool. It totally does its own thing. Yeah, it like totally has its own brains, if you will, which is like such a cool thing. It's called the enteric nervous system. It is influenced by other factors like our hormones. And so as those fluctuate, that communication can shift and change. And the motility, I'm doing this, so whoever's watching, whoever's not watching doesn't get my hand gestures, which is great. But a big part is the migrating motor complex, MMC as we call it. It's what actually helps boop, 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 squeeze and like move poo along, for a lack of a better word. And so that can shift in pregnancy and can also shift postpartum. So having additional benefits of like a probiotic that we know can help stimulate that, adding in something like hormone replacement therapy, if and when appropriate, can help with that. It's not uncommon for those things to be experienced. Again, not everyone does, which is great. But I think you just doing what you did food-wise, of like you were eating good fiber, you were eating some probiotic-rich foods, like from the yogurts, or if you're a sauerkraut or kefir, like there's a lot of different ways we can get in some live cultures that those things I think definitely helped. Looking back now, or looking forward, either or, what would you do differently, or what are you going to do differently for postpartum round 2?
Number 1, I'm going to have conversation with my team, a more thorough one. I obviously did last time, but a more thorough one on just how much I struggled the first time. And I hope that doesn't happen again. But if it does, I might need more time, or I might need more support. Just all of that. So that's the first thing. Okay. Number 2, I will, from the jump, lean on community.
Amazing.
I was really I was with my baby, but it was just me and my baby. And it was kind of isolating. And it was, when I started connecting with other moms that I felt a lot more support. I started to get a clear picture of what's normal and what wasn't.
Amazing.
I will do more self-care.
Okay.
So great. I love like a sitz bath with some herbs. Now when one of my friends gives birth, I love putting together a postpartum basket.
Okay.
And it's like some of the things that I did, which were great, and some of the things I wish I did. So, the herbs for a sitz bath, the body oil, like all of that. A lot of my friends did, not a lot, some of my friends worked with a postpartum doula, and they did a kind of massage called Abhyanga.
Okay.
I think I'm saying it right. It's an Ayurvedic massage, and it's meant to just calm down your nervous system. So I think I'll do more of that.
Incredible. I love just hearing you say self-care. That makes me so excited.
I know. I'm really not great at it. Like I can kind of like schedule it in, but it's not
easy to push off, right?
It's easy to push off.
Like looking back and also looking forward, you recognize that more of that would have likely been helpful for you. So I'm excited that that's going to be a priority.
One fun kind of weird thing that I purchased postpartum that I only used twice, but next time I'm going to use it more. And I don't know if it does anything, but it made me feel good and made me feel like I was taking care of myself. It's called the Leah Moon, or we'll link it in the show notes. It's basically like a vagina steam. Like when Paltrow was doing the yoni steams. So this is like an at-home yoni steam situation. It's like a nice seat. There's
is there music?
Infrared light. No, but it has LED light.
Okay. Hello.
Yep.
She's getting a party down there.
So I'm going to use that. I have one in my house now.
Okay. I do feel like a missed opportunity not having music, because it should sync with the light.
It should, yeah. I mean,
just food for thought for them.
We can maybe we can make a Spotify Yoni Steam playlist for everyone else.
May or may not be in the show notes. Stay tuned.
We will leave that out, but we'll think about it. If we get a lot of requests, we'll put it in. Anyway, I will use that more. So I will do a lot more self-care. I'm going to be a lot more gentle. I'm going to supplement with, supplement-wise, I really like what I did.
Yeah, I think we had
my thyroid organized. I went back on the prenatal. I was doing heavy omega. I was doing extra vitamin D. I was doing my Beekeeper's Gut Health every day. I was doing my propolis spray every day.
You had a great stack.
Yeah, I was doing the Beekeeper's Brain Health. Actually, Mom Brain's a real thing. I still am obsessed with that one.
We love some acetylcholine support.
Yeah, but that was actually a really interesting one. Like I felt kind of like a mental fog for a while.
Okay.
And I know maybe not everyone has this, but your brain does change because you're zeroing in on the baby. It's a biological.
It actually physically changes. There was very recently, I think it was the end of last year, maybe even earlier this year, a mom who works in healthcare. I think she's a doctor of sorts. I forget exactly her credentials. She is incredible, and in the pursuit of science, did brain MRIs throughout her pregnancy to show the structural change. And there was a significant change structurally in the brain throughout pregnancy, some of which is thought to not ever return to how it was pre-pregnancy, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just a change. And so, yes, we all say like, or I've heard like mom brain or whatever it may be, but like, no, yes, there's structurally a shift in your brain, for better or for worse.
Postpartum, I really felt a lot of mental fog and fatigue. Now I feel like I'm fucking firing on all cylinders. I feel like as a mom, I'm much better at multitasking. I mean, you have to. You see my multitasking. People think
it's amazing.
They're like, oh, you're being rude. I'm like, I heard every fucking thing and I wrote it down. Look at my notes. Anyway, I feel like being a mom is a real superpower, but postpartum, I had a lot of brain fog. I used the Beekeeper's Brain Health liposomal every single day. And then I liked that too, because she was still getting the choline through my breast milk, right? So like that was nice because I was giving her some extra. I started using the stress support as well, which was very essential for me. Especially just like getting back to sleeping normally. I was so used to waking up in the night. So it took me, I still, have to really be on top of my sleep game. Sleep doesn't come naturally to me.
I know.
But yeah, I think that's it. Community, more self-care.
Some small supplement adjustments, but
basically just adding in calcium, but sticking with what I did, the really nourishing foods, the high protein diet, and then giving yourself time.
Well, thank you for just being, you and all that you are and just sharing your experience, because I think a lot of what you shared today and on this episode is not talked about. Like really the ugly part about being postpartum, because you're supposed to be celebrating. You have this newborn and like there's all these societal pressures on you as a new mom, especially as a fucking boss-ass CEO, female founder mom, to layer on top. So I just want to thank you for just being honest, because obviously I know what to expect from like the medical part of my brain, but I personally have not expected it. So as someone who is hopefully going to be an expecting mom in the future, it's just exciting to hear what your experience has been. So thank you, and know that I will and will always continue to be here to support you in postpartum.
Thank you, love.
Thank you.